I'm out and about today shooting with the delightful Sigma BF. Beautiful foolishness indeed. I have lots and lots of thoughts and feelings so far, so let's get stuck into it.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
First of all, I've had this heart-stopping panic several times throughout the day, like I've forgotten something. And I've forgotten SD cards because there is no SD slot on the very minimal BF. We just have an internal storage of 230 gigabytes instead. I still feel like I've forgotten something, even though I know I've done nothing wrong. So inside the Sigma BF, we have the full-frame 24 megapixel sensor, which may or may not be the same one inside the Lumix S9 or the S5 Mark II, which is not the fastest readout speed in the world, but certainly wonderful in low light and capable of getting some absolutely gorgeous images. And just like the Lumix S9, seeing a full-frame camera in this small form factor is always quite exciting to me. There are pros and cons to that because it really does depend on which lens you want to pair with it, but you can get some smaller setups if you try. Here are a few of my favourite setups. I have a TT Artisan lens, which is also silver and looks beautiful, and also an M-mount Brighton Star 28mm f2.8. The downside of both of these is while they are tiny, they are manual focus, and that is sometimes the payoff when you're looking for smaller lenses. The other payoff is like with the new Lumix Pancake zoom. If you do want something that's compact, you do tend to have narrow apertures. This is size, science, and full frame problems, I'm afraid, and the Sigma BF is no different here. A lot of the Sigma primes are very nice. I have a 35mm with me from Sigma, which is also silver and gorgeous, and I think the 45mm f2.8 will also be nice as well. The added benefit of using these Sigma primes is the aperture ring. Because the dials are so few and far between on the Sigma BF, I found that having an aperture ring as a dedicated ring physically has been really, really helpful. The joy of having the chance to play with this camera a little bit after the launch day is some of the dust has settled and some of the opinions have rolled in. And I've had some great responses so far on socials. I'll read you some of my favourites. Now all we need is the Sigma GF, then it might have curvier edges. Definitely a sports car. It'll have fun points, but try and use it every day and it'll bug you. I quite like that analogy. That's a good one. One thing I have to applaud Sigma on is they have done something completely different. You know, in a world where every camera is black and boxy and has a very similar layout, Sigma have gone, do you know what? Let's try something new. Unlike the Lumix S9, I wouldn't say the Sigma BF is a true hybrid camera, personally. Yes, it is capable of shooting great video, up to 6K, but there's no IBIS built in, there's no in-body stabilization. You only have electronic stabilization, which is not the best. And while the autofocus, it does have phase detect autofocus, which is leagues better than the Sigma FPL camera, which I tried a year or so ago. It's so much better. It still is not great when it comes to video. It does hunt a little bit, and the subject detection isn't on par with Lumix cameras and other ones that I've used. For photo, the autofocus has been super snappy, and you have two options when you're shooting. You have all zones, so you let the camera decide, or you can poke the screen, which is what I prefer to do, just to have a little bit of autonomy, particularly if I'm shooting like with the 85mm 1.8, which I've got on at the moment, which gives you a really nice shallow depth of field, so you can really frame things nice and simply using the touchscreen. Unfortunately, that's the only thing the touchscreen is good for. You can't use it to navigate the menus or anything like that, and it isn't the most responsive touchscreen in the world as well. If you were to shoot video with this, you would need it to be on a tripod because there's no IBIS. But then you also have the issue of it not having a hot shoe or a cold shoe or a mic input aside from the USB-C port. So it's not really designed to be kitted out. And what does that leave us with? A £2,000 camera that isn't spec heavy and is very photocentric. I think that explains who this is for. You know, it's the sports car analogy, like someone said on my Instagram, or the Rolex watch wearers of the world. People that want something stylish and striking and different, but aren't necessarily too bothered about having spec for the price point, which is quite niche. Admittedly. Do you know what I've missed most today? And it's not that we don't have a mechanical shutter, it's not that we don't have an EVF, though even though it's not a very bright day today, I have struggled even with the screen on full brightness. It's usable, but I do wish it had an EVF. But the thing that I've missed the most is there's no blooming Wi-Fi. There's no Wi-Fi. So why have all these really nice JPEG customizations and then not have the ability to stick it on your phone and get it onto socials? If I have to put the files on my computer anyway, I may as well edit the raw files. And I do understand, you know, don't put an SD card door on it because it'll ruin the design. Fine. Don't stick an EVF on it because it'll look a bit lumpy and a bit weird. Fine. But adding Wi-Fi into this camera, this modern £2,000 camera, wouldn't have affected the physical part of the camera at all. It would have just been an internal thing, so it wouldn't have messed with the design. And I do think that's a big oversight personally, because even my 11-year-old GM5, I can transfer the JPEGs over and share things to social. And if you are using this as an everyday carry, which is what I assume most people would want it for, I think that's a big element to miss out. The shareability. Let me know what you think about that. Maybe, you know, is this minimalism gone a bit too far? Is this actually the point? You know, Sigma want us to be unplugged and more mindful about our photography rather than thinking about sharing it. But either way, it's a feature that I would have liked to have seen. So if you are thinking about buying this camera, of all the things I talk about today, this is the bit to pay attention to. How does it handle? How do these minimalistic, beautiful buttons and the new design actually work in practice? There's pros and cons, let me tell you that. First of all, the main dial, which is your fix everything dial, there's just one, is a delight to use. It's so premium, it is so clicky, it's absolutely gorgeous to use, and it's very tactile. So the menus are very minimal, but not necessarily simple. In some scenarios it works great, but in other scenarios I just feel like the main features are too many clicks away. Let me explain. So say I want to be in shutter speed priority. I open the menu and I navigate to shutter speed. And now that lovely circular dial and that cute little extra screen, which I really, really like, shows your shutter speed priority. So on the surface you think, well, that's super simple. But what if a couple of seconds later, I want to change the photo profile that I'm in and maybe shoot some nice monochrome or some orange and teal, which is a very nice profile. It's back into the menu, over to the right, and round, round, round we go. I'm about 12 clicks and swishes deep. Whereas if this is a different camera, most of those settings would be on their own dedicated dial or button. And I do think, just like with the lack of Wi-Fi, this might actually be by design. I think Sigma want us to think about things and take our time. Yes, I get that. I do get that. I do get the romanticization. Is that a word? I do get it. You know, let's go out and be mindful, let's turn off our phones, let's take photos, and that's great. But it's also frustrating if you have a fast-paced composition coming up and you're not in the right settings and you're faffing with the camera and the moment's gone. I do think this will get better over time. I've been using this camera solidly for a number of days now, and I do think it's getting into my muscle memory a little bit more. But things are just a few too many clicks away, in my opinion. And minimal is not simple. This is the theme of this video. How much can we make minimal, and what is the cost? What's the payoff? One thing that I'm quite sad to see is the battery life is atrocious. You're definitely going to want to buy a couple of batteries with this camera. I was just walking through town, not even taking photographs, and I was mooching through the menus trying to find how to turn on auto preview. Still haven't found it, by the way. And my battery went from 99% to 81% before I'd even started shooting, and it's only like a 15-minute walk. Small camera, small battery, big sensor. It's always going to be a problem. Just buy extra batteries accordingly. I know this next one may be a deal breaker for some people, and I think it's a deal breaker for me. I had the same problem with the Lumix S9, actually. I've not quite got on board with it just yet. And it's just the same with this one, and that is because we're shooting in electronic only shutter mode. There's no mechanical shutter. There is no mechanical click. And the reason I was desperately searching for the auto preview setting is when you actually take a photograph, there is no feedback whatsoever. I mean, you can have an electronic click sound, but I'm of the mindset that if any of my technology makes a sound, I'm just going to throw it in the sea. My phone's been on silent for about 10 years now. And the same goes with my cameras. The first thing I do is turn off the sound. So if there's no sound, and there's no click of a mechanical shutter, and there's no auto preview, then there's just no way of knowing when you've taken a photo. It really is quite soulless. It's a lot to get used to. It's a very modern feeling, like taking a photograph with a phone, essentially, because you don't have that lovely mechanical clack. I'm not a fan. I didn't like it on the S9, and I don't like it on this. And the solution isn't putting a horrible clicky electronic sound over it either, because that's just not the same either. One thing that is absolutely excellent is it is super fast to turn on, and you have two modes. You have like a proper shutdown mode where you see the little symbol, and then you have like a sleep mode where you just press the power button once. And both of these modes are super fast to get back up and running again, which is wonderful. I really love how Sigma have utilised the tiny additional screen, and in the sleep mode it shows you your battery percentage. When I've been talking about this camera on my socials, the biggest question I've had quite a few times is, how does it feel to hold? Is it as uncomfortable to hold as it looks? Because the edges are quite severe and quite sharp looking. And I have to say, I think the answer is probably yes. The texture on the front goes a long way to keep it quite grippy, but it is quite a stress position to keep your hand in for any length of time. There is only one camera strap lug on the right hand side. I wish that there was one on the left as well, because it would be so much more convenient to have it on a longer neck strap, which is how I tend to carry cameras. So I find myself leaning on this. You've got the thumb grip on the back, and then on the front there's absolutely nothing, and I find my little idle hands make devil's work leaning on this, and that would be disastrous. So it's like a grip strength test. I do this in the gym. I pinch weights to get my grip strength better for climbing, and it feels like that when I'm walking around. So yes, it's not the most comfortable to hold, and I found that the best way to hold the blooming thing is just to let it go loose on your wrist strap. It feels like not something you want to do with a £2,000 beautiful camera, but I do think if it hit anything, the thing that it hit would be in more danger, because it is built beautifully. One thing that's very important to me as a sort of out and about street photography sort of person is that everything should be usable with one hand. And yes, everything is on the right hand side, so this looks like it ticks that box. But I did just have one slight issue, just because depending on what lens you have, if the lens is quite front heavy, the power button is actually this one on the bottom. So sometimes I need to, even doing it now to try and show you, I have to hold the camera to reach down at the bottom to press the power button. Depending on the lens, sometimes I could get to it, but 9 times out of 10, even though everything is on the right hand side, I did need 2 hands to turn the camera on and off. I just wish the power button was in a slightly more ergonomic place. So what really matters when we're choosing a camera? It's a very personal decision. I think one of the most obvious answers is, I want this camera to take amazing photographs. And make no mistake, the Sigma BF takes stunning photographs. Straight out of camera, the images are gorgeous. I love the colors in the Sigma cameras. I love the photo presets in the Sigma cameras. The raw files will have loads of information on them. If you have just one box to tick, does this take great photos? 100%, definitely. This camera does that. The problem with that is so many cameras these days take amazing photographs. Technology's progressed to the point where now we have to think about the things on top of that. What are the next important features to you? If the next important features are style and build quality and having something special and different, the BF would be amazing. If you're more spec orientated and you want to get bang for buck, this probably isn't the camera for you. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong decision here. It's a very personal choice. And the thing that's great about the camera industry is there's something out there for everyone. I mean, I collect Pentax Qs and weird pink cameras and green cameras. I like weird cameras. So there's definitely something out there for everyone. And this will tick a lot of boxes for the certain person. I'm not convinced that person is me, to be honest, but that doesn't mean it's a bad camera. I just wanted to shout out the Leica T-Type 701 camera. I think you can't speak about one without the other. The Sigma BF is milled out of one honking chunk of metal, and it's a feat of engineering, of course it is. The Leica T did the same thing as well, many moons ago. I think they tried to tick a lot of boxes with both of these cameras. They're both trying to be very stylish. They're both trying to be quite minimal. I think the Leica leaned into being a bit more techy with a big touchscreen on the back and having Wi-Fi. They're both L-mount. It manages to maintain a beautiful design while still having a pop-up flash and a hot shoe. Yeah, I think if I was looking for a stylish, special camera, I would probably lean towards the Leica T personally, because it has three features that this one doesn't. It has 2 lug straps, so I can wear it on a neck strap. It has a mechanical shutter, and it also has Wi-Fi. And for an everyday carry that's a premium everyday carry, I think those 3 might be a deal breaker for me personally. Your mileage may vary. If you're more inclined to like the full frame sensor, we have to bring in the Lumix S9 into this conversation. Style-wise, as stylish as I think I've made my yellow taxi cab S9, it is plastic fantastic. This Sigma BF is above and beyond in terms of build quality, no question about it. But the S9 has the same sensor. The S9 has built-in IBIS. The S9 has OpenGate and much more advanced video features, and also much more advanced autofocus features as well. So if you are looking for something similar to this but more spec orientated and perhaps more value for money, the S9 is an option. If you're looking for something stylish, I really like the Leica, even though it's older and probably quite hard to get now. Maybe this is like a modern iteration of that. So yeah, either of those are very stylish and unique cameras.
Squarespace couldn't make it easier for you if you are looking to build your own website. They have AI tools that will give you color schemes and font pairings, even sort out the layouts of all of your page. All you need to do is just click what sort of catches your eye, and then Squarespace will do the rest for you. It's really as simple as dragging and dropping. If you ever wanted to sell your own photo prints or perhaps your own merchandise, you can do that through your own website as well. But if you're not at that stage yet, it doesn't matter. You could start at a simple level that Squarespace offer and just have a blog. Just maybe have a landing page and show your own portfolio. And then if you want to expand your horizons as you go, Squarespace can grow with you. And that's why I've stuck with them for absolute years. Even from my first wedding portfolio website was always on Squarespace, and God, I've been doing that for a long time. So have a tinker using the link in the description, and if you are ready to buy, you can use code microphonenerds for some money off your first purchase.
I got all giddy because it was a vaguely sunny day and I could film outside again instead of in my office, but I think I've probably came like 3 weeks too early. I'm freezing. Anyway, I don't want to come across as too critical for this camera. I think making comparisons between this and the S9, for example, which I have done in this video, isn't quite fair to the BF. It's like saying that a Formula One car is a terrible option to pick your kids up from school in. Of course it is, but you're not using that car or that camera for the same reasons, and you're not buying them for the same reasons. Yeah, I think it's in sort of a league of its own, for better or worse. The BF is a beautiful foolishness all on its own, and I think it's the best name ever for it, to be honest. I think what Sigma are aiming for, and what I've experienced with this camera, is to try and spark joy with people, to just go out and spend time with a wonderful piece of technology, a well-built piece of technology and a very interesting camera, and just go out and take photos and enjoy yourself. I think it is incredible that Sigma are kicking butt and taking names in the camera alliance, and they have the L-mount alliance. More L-mount cameras the better, because I love those lenses and have a ton of them. But for me personally, it's a little bit too pricey for what you get. I think I definitely end up in the spec category for the money. And while this is beautiful and, you know, I think it'll make a lot of people happy, for me there are a couple of omissions, like the lack of Wi-Fi, which would turn me off this camera. But as I said, just because I'm not the target audience doesn't mean it won't make a lot of people very happy. Is the beautiful foolishness for you? Let me know in the comments, and if you would like to hear more about the Leica camera that I was banging on about just, I have a whole dedicated video for it which I'll link in the description and around here.